So Knock at the Cabin was written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and it stars Dave Bautista, Jonathan Groff, Ben Aldridge, Abby Quinn, Nika Umuka Bird, Rupert Grint, Kristen Cui. And it's about a family that goes on a little retreat. They go on a vacation for a little bit, and then a group of strangers comes to the cabin that they're staying at and say they have to make a horrible decision. They have to either save themselves or kill one person in the family to prevent the apocalypse. So this was a movie I was kind of looking forward to. The trailers were very interesting. The premise sounded interesting. And with someone like M. Night Shyamalan involved with it, this could go either way. This could either be a surprisingly well done movie or it could be really terrible. I feel like M. Night Shyamalan has one of the most interesting careers. Obviously, I like some of his movies. He can make some really good movies like Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense. And he's also made some of the worst movies ever, like Last Airbender. But nowadays, he kind of makes movies that are either they can be really really good or really just ridiculous and over the top. And I was didn't know where Knock at the Cabin was going to land, and so this movie, it's somewhere in the middle for me. Parts of it I do really like, but there are parts of this movie that I actually don't really like, and no surprise, it's mainly because of M. Night Shyamalan. So what works of this movie? Well, Dave Bautista is really good in the movie. I thought he was spectacular. I really dug his character. I really thought he really did a good job. This may be his best performance, I would say. The other actors are pretty good, but they're not as good as Dave Bautista. Like Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge and Kristen Cui are really good as this family. I really believe they're dynamic for the most part. Nika Umuka Bird and Abby Quinn also do a really good job. Rupert Grint does a really good job too, even though his performance is not really in the movie that much. The cinematography is also really well done. There's a couple interesting long takes, and there's a couple ways they kind of move the camera around that I thought were really fascinating. The score is also really good. It's intense. It helps build up the scenes really well, and I thought that was really well done. Speaking of tension and suspense, I thought that was built up incredibly well, where they kind of build up this whole storyline where it's like, you know, should we actually do this? Can we actually do this? And at the same time, is this real or is this not? I felt like the tension, the suspense of those situations actually helped the movie overall. And I kind of liked how it kind of played with the idea of like, we don't know exactly what's going on because the movie takes so many turns and they're surprising. Like, there's a lot of surprises in this movie where it's like, okay, that adds another layer to like how this movie can actually play out. And also, I really dug how it kind of felt like an old school thriller, like an old school invasion movie. I thought that was really interesting for an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And also, thankfully, this movie's mercifully short. This movie's about 90 something minutes long. I feel like this movie could have gone at least 2 hours, and I feel like if it did, it would have just padded out the runtime a bit. So I kind of appreciated that this movie was just 90 to 100 minutes long. So what doesn't work in this movie? Well, M. Night Shyamalan's style of writing. It really brings down the second half of the movie when they kind of just... they just speak like it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie. They say lines that nobody on the face of the earth would say except that they were in an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Also, there's some things about this movie that just don't make any sense. Like, they kind of bring up these things that will happen for the apocalypse. Like, oh, there's going to be a plague and there's going to be a tsunami and such. And there's things about both of those that just don't make any sense. Like, there's this is not really a spoiler or anything, but there's a tsunami we kind of see in the trailer. And it mentions it's a newscast, and it's like, this just happened. There was a tsunami. And it's someone recording the tsunami actually approaching them, and they actually go underwater. And I'm just thinking, so if this just happened, does that mean they got out of the water that quickly and uploaded this video really quickly? It makes zero sense. And there's also a thing about a virus that's spreading throughout this movie. And obviously, it kind of feels like a mention to the pandemic that we've been going through the last few years. But at the same time, that's not how viruses like that spread. It just doesn't make any sense. Also, there are some things about this movie that just kind of annoyed me. Whenever they had a flashback, there's a lot of flashbacks in this movie. I guess it's to kind of, build up the relationships between the family in this movie and kind of play into like what's really going on. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I just felt like whenever it did flashback, it was just a distraction from the actual what was actually happening in the moment, and it kind of just made it not as tension filled. And there are some things that kind of resolve themselves. One of the main characters gets a concussion at one point, but then halfway through it's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. How is that even possible? Like, how do you just recover from a concussion that fast? And also, there are way too many close-up shots. Like, honestly, you could play a drinking game with how many close-up shots in this movie. Like, they all just kind of talk to each other, and they all just kind of like it cuts back and forth between, like, cuts one person like this, and then it cuts back to another person like this. And it's honestly kind of annoying every once in a while when you just, again, you could play a drinking game with how many close-up shots of people's faces are. Like, how many close-up shots of people's faces are in this movie. It's amazing. And there's also even a scene where they're waiting for a news story, and this is where the M. Night Shyamalan cameo comes in. And it doesn't make sense because he's on like a home shopping network and they're all just kind of staring at him while this is happening, but they're all just kind of waiting for the news story. It's like, what channel is home shopping followed by breaking news? Like, what channel is that? I don't think any channel like that exists. But then again, I can't really complain about the absurdity because I'm just kind of given into the idea that M. Night Shyamalan's movies are just absurd and he kind of just doesn't really care. So maybe I shouldn't care as much, but then again, there's so many things about this movie that kind of just didn't work for me. But overall, I would say Knock at the Cabin. The performances are pretty good. The cinematography is great. The score is great. It has a lot of really good vibes to it, like old school thriller vibes with great tension, great suspense, and great mysteries throughout the movie. It's just the style of writing that really bogs down the second half, to the point where honestly, I was starting to laugh at times, and some moments just don't work. The flashbacks don't work. The close-up shots are annoying. Also, the twist in the movie is hardly a twist, and that also kind of made me roll my eyes. But then again, that's a lot of M. Night Shyamalan's twists these days. But it was better than the twist in Old, I'll give it that. So, I would say this movie is... You kind of should know what you're getting into. If you're into M. Night stuff, then you'll probably dig this. But if you're not, then you shouldn't watch it. I'll give Knock at the Cabin 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So, what's your favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.